House Divided, page 51. Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky and then moved with his family to the backwoods of Illinois, where he had little access to formal schooling. However, he made education a personal priority. As an adult, he served in the militia during the Black Hawk War of 1832, and after one failed political campaign was elected to the Illinois state legislature at the age of 25. During this time, Lincoln also earned a license to practice law. Returning to politics, he ran for the Senate in 1858. He accepted his party's nomination with the following speech, given June 16, 1858, at the Illinois Republican Convention. Although he lost the race, his debates with Stephen Douglas earned him a reputation as a powerful orator, and 2 years later, the Republican nomination for president. Mr. President and gentlemen of the convention, if we could first know where we are and whither we are tending, we could better judge what to do and how to do it. We are now far into the 5th year since a policy was initiated with the avowed object and confident promise of putting an end to slavery agitation. Under the operation of that policy, that agitation has not only ceased but has constantly augmented. In my opinion, it will not cease until a crisis shall have been reached and passed. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall. But I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it, and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in the course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward till it shall become alike lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. Have we no tendency to the latter condition? Let anyone who doubts carefully contemplate that now almost complete legal combination, piece of machinery, so to speak, compounded of the Nebraska Doctrine and the Dred Scott decision. Let him consider not only what work the machinery is adapted to do, and how well adapted, but also let him study the history of its construction, and trace if he can, or rather fail if he can, to trace the evidences of design and concert of action among its chief architects from the beginning. The new year of 1854 found slavery excluded from more than half the states by state constitutions and from most of the national territory by congressional prohibition. 4 days later commenced the struggle which ended in repealing that congressional prohibition. This opened all the national territory to slavery and was the first point gained. But so far, Congress only had acted, and an endorsement by the people, real or apparent, was indispensable to save the point already gained and give chance for more. This necessity had not been overlooked, but had been provided for as well as might be in the notable argument of squatter sovereignty, otherwise called sacred right of self-government, which later phrase, though expressive of the only rightful basis of any government, was so perverted in this attempted use of it as to amount to just this, that if any one man chose to enslave another, no third man shall be allowed to object. That argument was incorporated into the Nebraska bill itself in the language which follows. It being the true intent and meaning of this act not to legislate slavery into any territory or state, not to exclude it therefrom, but to leave the people thereof perfectly free to form and regulate their domestic institutions in their own way, subject only to the Constitution of the United States. Then opened the roar of loose declamation in favor of squatter sovereignty and sacred right of self-government. But, said opposition members, let us amend the bill so as to expressly declare that the people of the territory may exclude slavery. Not we, said the friends of the measure, and down they voted the amendment. While the Nebraska bill was passing through Congress, a law case involving the question of a Negro's freedom by reason of his owner having voluntarily taken him first to a free state and then into a territory covered by the congressional prohibition, and held him as a slave for a long time, and each was passing through the U.S. Circuit Court for the District of Missouri, and both Nebraska bill and lawsuit were brought to a decision in the same month of May 1854. The Negro's name was Dred Scott, which name now designates the decision finally made in the case. Before the then next presidential election, the law case came to and was argued in the Supreme Court of the United States, but the decision of it was deferred until after the election. Still, before the election, Senator Trumbull, on the floor of the Senate, requested the leading advocate of the Nebraska bill to state his opinion whether the people of a territory can constitutionally exclude slavery from their limits, and the latter answers, "That is a question for the Supreme Court." The election came. Mr. Buchanan was elected, and the endorsement, such as it was secured. That was a second point gained. The endorsement, however, fell short of a clear popular majority by nearly 400,000 votes, and so perhaps was not overwhelmingly reliable and satisfactory. The outgoing president, in his last annual message, as impressively as possible, echoed back upon the people the weight and authority of the endorsement. The Supreme Court met again, did not announce their decision, but ordered a re-argument. The presidential inauguration came, and still no decision of the court, but the incoming president, in his inaugural address, fervently exhorted the people to abide by the forthcoming decision, whatever it might be. Then in a few days came the decision. The reputed author of the Nebraska bill finds an early occasion to make a speech at this Capitol endorsing the Dred Scott decision, and vehemently denouncing all opposition to it. The new president, too, seizes the early occasion of the Silliman letter to endorse and strongly construe that decision, and to express his astonishment that any different view had ever been entertained. At length, a squabble springs up between the president and the author of the Nebraska bill on the mere question of fact whether the Lecompton Constitution was or was not, in any just sense, made by the people of Kansas. And in that quarrel the latter declares that all he wants is a fair vote for the people, and that he cares not whether slavery be voted down or voted up. I do not understand his declaration that he cares not whether slavery be voted down or voted up to be intended by him other than as an apt definition of the policy he would impress upon the public mind, the principle for which he declares he has suffered so much and is ready to suffer to the end. And well may he cling to that principle. If he has any parental feeling, well may he cling to it. That principle is the only shred left of his original Nebraska doctrine. Under the Dred Scott decision, squatter sovereignty squatted out of existence, tumbled down like temporary scaffolding, like the mold at the foundry served through one blast and fell back into loose sand, helped to carry an election, and then was kicked to the winds. His late joint struggle with the Republicans against the Lecompton Constitution involves nothing of the original Nebraska doctrine. That struggle was made on a point, the right of a people to make their own constitution, upon which he and the Republicans have never differed. The several points of the Dred Scott decision in connection with Senator Douglas's care, not policy, constitute the piece of machinery in its present state of advancement. This was the third point gained. The working points of that machinery are, first, that no Negro slave imported as such from Africa and no descendant of such slave can ever be a citizen of any state, in the sense of that term as used in the Constitution of the United States. This point is made in order to deprive the Negro in every possible event of the benefit of that provision of the United States Constitution, which declares that the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Secondly, that subject to the Constitution of the United States, neither Congress nor a territorial legislature can exclude slavery from any United States territory. This point is made in order that individual men may fill up the territories with slaves, without danger of losing them as property, and thus to enhance the chances of permanency to the institution through all the future. Thirdly, that whatever the that whether the holding a Negro in actual slavery in a free state makes him free as against the holder, the United States courts will not decide, but will leave to be decided by the courts of any slave state the Negro may be forced into by the master. This point is made not to be pressed immediately, but if acquiesced in for a while and apparently endorsed by the people at an election, then to sustain the logical conclusion that what Dred Scott's master might lawfully do with Dred Scott in the free state of Illinois, every other master may lawfully do with any other 1 or 1,000 slaves in Illinois or in any other free state. Auxiliary to all this and working hand in hand with it, the Nebraska Doctrine, or what is left of it, is to educate and mold public opinion, at least northern public opinion, not to care whether slavery is voted down or voted up. This shows exactly where we now are, and partially also whither we are tending.